Was on the FBI's radar long before this weekend's attack. Federal agents were tracking Elton Simpson for years, dating back to 2007. Steve Rogers is a retired lieutenant detective out of New Jersey and joins us now with more on this. Interesting to hear about the FBI's oversight, potentially, of these suspects, now deceased. And to know that local law enforcement really bore the brunt of confronting this individual. Talk to us a little bit about that, about what weight is on local law enforcement when it comes to confronting potential terrorist attacks like this one.
Well, ISIS, in effect, if they did direct this attack, has declared war on the United States. And the battlefield is not going to be overseas. It's going to be right here in the neighborhoods of the United States of America, which means that burden to fight these terrorists are on local law enforcement. Now, I've said all along that the U.S. government is going to have to pour millions of dollars into training of local law enforcement agencies on tactical responses to these terrorist attacks.
But these agencies in the suburbs of Dallas might not have had that extensive training, but they were still able to confront these two individuals.
Well, sure. It was a police officer who was trained in marksmanship that was able to take them out. But keep in mind, they had information. To their credit, the police had information. They had SWAT teams. They had all the weapons they needed in the event this attack would have been much larger than it was.
We should note that the official word is that this is not a quote-unquote terrorist attack. It doesn't have that title quite yet, although you have different lawmakers like Congressman McCall, for example, calling it that. Why does that matter? It
matters a lot. And, you know, the government needs to be transparent with the American people. These were terrorists. They had terrorist connections. Obviously, we don't know if ISIS directed the attack, but regardless, they committed terror upon the American people through this attack. And remember this, they weren't looking to kill one or two people. They wanted to take out close to 200 people. So it was a planned attack. Kudos to the Garland, Texas Police Department and that police officer, that hero, that street cop who actually prevented a disaster.
I know your expertise really is on the local level, which is so valuable to us, Steve. I want to mention that. When you hear, though, that the FBI has been watching at least one of these men for years, you would presume, and I'm wondering if I'm presuming too much, that they would notice that he had left his home and was on his way to Texas. And I'm wondering if you have any thinking, a gut feeling of whether or not the FBI had any oversight or heads up that he was on his way to attack this particular site.
Well, it's very difficult to stretch your resources the way we have to stretch them. Sure, they had him on the radar. They obviously didn't have him under surveillance, but they did. The FBI and the local police collaborated information and prevented a disaster, which leads to one big issue. Our government, especially the White House, has to pour funding into the NSA. We have to increase surveillance. We have to increase the resources that local police need. Because remember, it's the local police who are going to be the first responders, and within those few minutes, it's either going to be a do or die.
Can you be more specific about the resources that the police departments need?
I challenge most people to ask police officers in the majority of towns across this country if they have been trained on how to detect terrorists, collect terrorist or intelligence information. Are they trained to really respond to situations like this? The answer will be no.
How is that different than your regular criminal on the street?
Well, look, your regular criminal, he has one thing in mind, and that's to commit his crime and to leave, to collect something, to get a reward. These individuals are terrorists. They have one thing in mind, to terrorize the United States. And the way you do that is you do what these individuals did. You try to take out not one or two people. You kill. That's what they want to do.
When you heard the news that this was a traffic cop that was able to take down these two men, you know, what did you think?
Well, you know, it's interesting. All cops are traffic cops. You know, we're out there doing all sorts of jobs. But his instinct kicked in. He knew he had to do something. God bless him. And it goes to this point. You know, there's a lot of criticism about local police officers today. That local cop in every town and city are the only one, that sea of blue. They're the only people separating us from terrorists and criminals and the law-abiding public.
It's a great reminder for us today. Steve, your perspective is always valuable. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
John?